In this week's Parsha, Parshas Shalach Lecha, we read the story of the Meraglim, the spies that were sent by Moshe to Eretz Israel, 12 spies, and when they returned, 10 gave a negative report, and 2 of them, Yehoshua and Kalev, wanted to give a positive report, but the people were not up for taking it. The Torah tells us, Vayipol Moshe v'Aaron al Paneim, Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces before the entire congregation, and Yehoshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuna, they tore their clothes. The people were not listening to the bounty of the land. They were relying on the negative report of the spies. And then Yehoshua and Kalev said to the people, Vayomru HaKol Adas b'nei Yisrael leimer, Ha'oretz asher avarnu ba, the land which we've just passed through, Los Oroisa, to spy it out. Tova ha'oretz ma'od ma'od. It's an exceedingly good land. Im chafetz banu Hashem, if Hashem desires us, v'hevei yosanu ala oretz azois, and brings us to the land, unasanu lanu eretz, and he gives us a land, asher hi zavas chalov Divash, it will be a land flowing with milk and honey. Well known is the Alter Rebbe's explanation on why the Meraglim, the spies, gave a negative report. After all, didn't they bring back the bountiful fruit of the land? The land was obviously a very luscious and beautiful land. So why did they give a negative report? So the Alter Rebbe explains, and this explanation is well known, that the generation of the wilderness were living a miraculous existence, sustained by the manna, the clouds of glory. They were in a bubble, and they didn't want to enter into a land in which they would have to engage in commerce, agriculture, and therefore, because of their desire for the detached existence, they gave a negative report on the land. And in fact, what their desire was achieved. That generation remained for 40 years in the desert. The next generation entered the land. In this shiur, we're going to give a slightly different and Kabbalistic interpretation based on a Maimah of the Alter Rebbe as well in Likutei Torah, but using more concepts from Kabbalah. The Sefer Eitz Chaim, written by Reb Chaim Vital, writes the following: the Shoresh HaMeraglim, the root of the spies, was from the world of machshava, of thought, which is called Leah. And that generation of the desert was a knowledgeable generation. It was a Dor Deah. They didn't want to enter into the land, which is on the level of Dibur, speech, which is called Rachel. That's how the Eitz Chaim explains the negative report of the spies. They were from the world of Machshava, Leah, and they didn't want to enter into the world of Dibur, Rachel. What does that mean? Torah and mitzvahs were given in this world, lahavdil bein hatomei v'hatoher, to delineate between that which is pure and impure. The concept of birurim, refining the world. What was the genesis of evil in this world to begin with? Kabbalah explains it was through the process of shviras hakelim, the breakage of the vessels. In the world of Tohu, the prototype before this world, as the Medrash says, Boina oilames umacharivon, that before Hashem created this world, he built worlds and he destroyed them. The world before this world was the world of chaos, the world of Tohu, in which the lights were great, the vessels were small, each wanted each vessel wanted all the light for itself, which was the original source of egocentricity. And of course, when you have a huge voltage going through a small light bulb, it shatters. And the shattered sparks of the world of Tohu, explains Kabbalah, fell. And as they fell, they became crass, and that resulted in the concept of ego and ultimately evil. That's how this world, the world we inhabit today, is a world in which is male klipos, it's full of klipa and sitra achra, uroshoim govrim boy, and the wicked currently have the upper hand. In this world, Torah and mitzvahs is given to refine the world, to extract the good from the bad. This process of birurim, which will end on Shabbos, in the 7th millennium. Then, Uviarta hara mikirbecha, Hashem will remove this evil from us, this will be refined, and as we know the halacha in Hilchos Shabbos, that boirer, separation, is prohibited on Shabbos. And of course, every Shabbos of ours is a taste of the world to come. Now we have mitzvahs lo saseh, the negative mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs saseh. The mitzvahs lo saseh removes the bad, and the mitzvahs aseh creates a vessel for the infusion of oir, of light. One separates and one raises. So for example, when a person dons a talus, that talus is made of wool from a sheep. And therefore one takes the animal and one elevates it into a mitzvah, and thereby one causes an infusion of the Or Ein Sof, of the infinite light, into this world. So one first needs to make it into a vessel, and then one can draw the light in. And this is what we are doing when we do mitzvahs. When we're doing mitzvahs such as shaking a lulav and esrog, and blowing the shofar, and donning a talus, we're drawing down the light of the Or Ein Sof into this world, separating the good from the bad and elevating the world, hence making a dira lo yizbarach, b'tachteining, a dwelling for Hashem down here in this world. But in truth, what is the mechanism? How does a human being achieve such a great infusion? So the Zohar puts it like this: Kadiskafio sitra achra, when the other side of holiness, the unholy side, is suppressed, istalik yokora de kudshubrichu b'chulu almin, the glory of Hashem diffuses right throughout all the worlds. Let's introduce here a Kabbalistic concept of igulim and yosher, circles and lines. What is the difference between a circle and a line? A circle is round. It doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end. Everything is equal around the circumference of the circle. A line has a beginning and it has an end. And there are various points on that line. It's linear, it's not circular. Kabbalah uses this concept of igulim and yosher to describe two different states in the chain order of creation. In the Seder Hishtalshelus, in the genesis of this physical world from the ethereal spiritual worlds, there is a chain order, and in this chain we have igulim, circles, and we have yosher, lines. And these two correspond to the two levels of soul, nefesh and ruach. Nefesh corresponds to igulim, and yosher corresponds to ruach. What does that mean? Let's take a mashal, a parable, a metaphor of a Rav and a Talmud, a teacher and a student. So the first thing is, everything is in the mind of the teacher. The teacher's mind has great clarity in the concept. Then the teacher starts aligning his mind in order to teach the student. The first thing is to inspect the capacity and the caliber of mind of the student. What can they and what can't they be able to comprehend? And consequently, just like a tailor who cuts his cloth, so too the teacher has to style the presentation in such a way that the student will be able to understand, and once has the basic concepts, develop the idea until eventually the student will grasp everything that is in the mind of the teacher. So let's go through the stages over here. First of all, you have the presentation of the concept. There, if you want, the or, the light of the concept, surrounds the mind of the student. The student hasn't grasped the concept yet. It's somewhat peripheral in their mind, and that would be comparable to the state of igulim. Everything is there, but it's not discernible. It hasn't yet been detailed. Everything is in one general principle, one general circle. Thereafter, the student starts unpicking the concept and starts internalizing and analyzing the concept until detail by detail they put together the whole picture. What they've done now is yosher. It's like a line, it's linear. It's step by step, piece by piece, putting the jigsaw puzzle together until they've got a whole picture in their head. That is a higher level than the circle. It's more detailed. It's been analyzed. So you have igulim, you have the general concept as presented in a circle, and then you have the yosher. Now, there are igulim and yosher in every single stage in the chain order. And to put differently in terms of moichin, in terms of mind, because this is Kabbalistic language, you have what's called moichin dekatnus, small-mindedness, and moichin degadlus, expansive mind, the state of expansive mind. So the original state of the student is moichin dekatnus, and then you come to moichin degadlus. You start by igulim and you progress to yosher. Now, in the higher worlds, you have what's called hecholos. A hechol is like a palace. Those hecholos are places, spiritual dimensions, which limit the concept because it's still in a state of a gulim. It hasn't yet been brought out. So, for example, you have the Hegel Haratzon, the Hegel of desire, the Hegel of Ahava, the Hegel of Yira, the palace of love, the palace of fear, which, from our perspective, we have, before any contemplation, a moichin de katnus, a small-minded concept of what is up there. Nevertheless, when a person starts meditating, and when a person with their mind starts understanding the concept and starts unraveling it. So, for example, let's take the concept of Kula kamei kula choshev. Everything before him is considered as naught. When you look at the world, you see an entity, something multifarious, something diverse. First of all, you have to start collating all that in your mind, understanding the principle of oneness, that all of the four corners of the earth, the seven heavens, the earth, is part of one God. Echad, Dalad Ruchos, Shema, the Ches is the seven Rikiim, the seven firmaments on the earth, is all part of Aleph, the oneness of Hashem. The Baal Shem Tov's concept of ongoing creation, how Hashem pumps something from nothing, divine creative energy into the creation to bring it into being something from nothing, hence it being a dependent existence, and hence the true existence of the world being the oneness of Hashem. Then the realization that all of that divine creative energy is a mere fraction, an infinitesimally small ray out of the Godhead, and therefore Kula, everything, kamei before him, kala choshev, is as naught. When a person starts that level of meditation, then the oiros, the lights, start piercing the kalim, the vessels, and what happens is an internalization, so that the gulim move to the state of yosher, the state of nefesh moves to the state of ruach. Now, we have a rule of isarusa dilatata, isarusa dilaela. An arousal from below precipitates an arousal from above. We said beforehand that Torah and mitzvahs is in order to refine the world. What that means is that when, for example, as the example which we gave beforehand, when we don a talus, we put that talus on, and the talus itself, for example, represents the makif, the peripheral, which is why it goes around us, and the individual tzitzis represent the various 32 channels of Chachma which come down into the world. So the idea is to pierce the veneer of the world. The world originally was created in a round state, as in everything in the heavenly spheres. Everything is round, the world is round, the sun is round, etc. Those are igulim. And then we need to, in a way of yosher, bring down into our minds, from the state of moichin de katnus, small-mindedness, into a state of expansive mind, moichin de gadlus, which is the state that we understand and comprehend that all before him is as nothing. Now, if I wanted to put that in biblical terminology, I would call that an Eretz Zavas Cholav Divash, a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, simply understood, a land flowing with milk and honey, says Rashi in the Torah. There are so many goats in Israel there's plenty of goat's milk. That's the milk referred to in the Torah, goat's milk. Honey, there's plenty of date honey. The honey referred to is actually not the bee's honey, but it's date honey. There's loads of dates in Israel, and hence you have lots of date honey. So the bounty of the land, having lots of goat's milk and date honey, actually is a physical manifestation of a spiritual state. In mysticism, Alma Tator Kegavna Alma Ilah. The world below is a reflection of the world above. Everything in the physical world is a result of a flow, a Seder Hishtalshalus, a chain order from that which is happening above. And in fact, the Maggid of Mezrich said, Da mala maila mimach, simply understood in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, it means know what is above you. However, the Maggid translated, Da, you should know, mala maila, that which happens above, mimach is coming from you. Because there's a reflective light over here. The way we act down here has a tremendous effect on what comes from above. So through our performance of mitzvahs, we can draw down more lights from above, piercing the kalim, the vessels, so that they no longer conceal, but actually they reveal. In the physical sense, this ends up with a land flowing with milk and honey. Let's have a look at milk and honey as they are in the spiritual sense. We all know that a baby has moichin de katnos, has a small mind. As it grows, it gains moichin de gadlus, a greater state of mind. How does that happen? That happens through milk from the mother. The milk of the mother grows from the state of moichin de katnos to moichin de gadlus. Where does that come from? That comes from the breast. The breast and the two breasts, which in Hebrew are called dadin, those come from the heart. And bina, it says, is liba. Bina is connected with the heart. Now, although bina is cerebral, chachma, bina, and das, nevertheless, Bina liba, heart has intuition. And therefore that intuition, that understanding of the heart, comes through the dadim, through the breasts, and is fed cholav, milk, to the child. In fact, it's brought in Kabbalah that cholav numerically is 40, and these represent the 4 yuds of the name Ab, which is a very high name of Hashem, and consequently, the feeding of this cholav, it results in the growing mind of the child. In fact, the Gemara in Nida says, Dam nekar venase cholav, that a woman, when she's feeding, she's not menstruant, because the blood is uprooted and it becomes milk. What does that mean? That means that the dam, the nefesh of the person, is translated into a form of milk, which actually raises the child from this moichin de katnos, small-minded state, to the large-minded state. Now, if we think of that in terms of Eretz Israel, this is a land which is flowing with milk. In other words, this is a land where the mitzvahs which we perform in the land have the effect of drawing down the light and growing our appreciation for godliness, which is why it's called Eretz Israel, a land which desires shorotza salasis rutzein kaina. It desires to do the will of Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu prayed many times that he be allowed into Eretz Israel. Tov Kuf Tes Vav Tvilas, 515 Tvilas, Begematria Es V'es Chanon. He prayed that he should be allowed into the land. Why was Moshe praying that he should go into the land? After all, what was wrong with the desert? And did he really want to eat the fruits of the land? Was that what he was looking for a nice juicy grape or fig or date? The answer is, Moshe Rabbeinu was looking to do the mitzvahs hatuluyos ba'aretz. He was looking to do the mitzvahs connected with the land. Because there are so many mitzvahs which one can only do in Eretz Israel, such as building the Beis HaMikdash, all the laws connected with the Beis HaMikdash, Trumas, Maisras, etc., etc. Those are all mitzvahs connected with the land. Why? Because those mitzvahs and that place is conducive to be Zavas Cholav, to bring down the milk, meaning to bring down supernal lights, so that in our minds we won't have moichin de katnos, a small understanding, but we will have a moichin de gadlus, a deep understanding. In fact, the Gemara says, Avira de Eretz Machkim, even the atmosphere of Eretz Israel makes a person smart. Divash, honey, is Divash Tamarim. Divash is the idea of mesikus, sweetness, tainug, pleasure. When a person experiences tainug, pleasure, that causes an expansive state of mind. So, for example, when a person has tremendous pleasure in understanding a concept, that itself broadens the mind. So when you have what's called in Kabbalah Hagdolas Hamidos, the growing of the midos from the milk which is coming from the breast of Bina. So you have Bina, Liba, Bina the heart, the breast feeding the midos and growing them. So a person has a deeper appreciation and understanding of elukus, of godliness. That itself causes a revelation, because isarusa delatata, an arousal from below, precipitates an arousal from above. That causes a deeper level of revelation. And of course, that results physically in physical bounty in the land. Now, let's get on to the Meraglim. We said beforehand from the Eitz Chaim that the desire of the Meraglim was to remain in the world of Machshava, thought, Leah. But they didn't want to come down to the world of Dibur, the world of Rachel. That's what it says in Eitz Chaim. What does that mean? Chazal tell us, our sages tell us, Kiyam Avram Avinu kol haTorah kodim shenitna. Avram Avinu, the patriarch Avram, kept the entire Torah before it was given. Now you may ask, how is that possible? So many things didn't happen before the time of Avram. So for example, there wasn't an Egypt, there wasn't the Exodus of Egypt, there wasn't the mitzvah of Pesach, there wasn't the Beis HaMikdash, etc., etc. How did he keep the whole Torah before it was given? The answer is that he kept it in a spiritual state. In other words, what was achieved by Torah later was achieved by Avram Avinu in a spiritual state. This was the claim of the spies. They said, why is it necessary to go into the land and do something physical? why do we have to do physical mitzvahs? Why can't we just keep the Torah and draw down its light into the world of thought, into the world of Leah? The answer is Zavas Cholav Divash. Toiva ha'aretz ma'oid ma'oid. The land is exceedingly good. The purpose of creation is the physical. Because Na'otz Techilosan B'Soifon, says the Sefer Yetzirah, the beginning is wedged in the end. It's specifically in the physical performance of the mitzvah that one can draw down the light into this physical world. And hence creating a dwelling for Hashem here in this world. It's not good enough to dwell in the bubble of the mind. Rather, one has to have ma'oid ma'oid. One has to have the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds. The twice ma'oid is the Almond Isgalian and the Almond Iskasia, the hidden world and the revealed world. You have to have that Eretz Zavas Cholav Divash, the land flowing with milk and honey, where people down here in this world will bring down a revelation of the lights piercing the veneer of the world, and down here within agriculture, within commerce, within day-to-day life. Kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim, all your deeds be for the sake of heaven, ubechol derachecha teyehu, in all your ways knowing him. It's a more ethereal, detached experience to live in a bubble in the desert. That's what the Meraglim wanted to achieve. However, the ultimate purpose of creation is that we actually engage with the world and that we take the physicality of the world, the wool of the sheep, and make it into tzitzis, the hide of the cow, and create from it Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and mezuzahs. And everything physical in that physical world, and to infuse it with spirituality, separating the good from the bad, creating a vessel in which we can thereby draw down the light of Hashem into this world. That's called the world of Tikkun, the world of correction. We have corrected the state of Tohu in whereby we've created Kelim Rechavim, broad vessels which can bring down the light. That's the meaning of Zavas Cholav Divash, that there is this flow of milk and honey, meaning the flow from the small-minded state to the broad-minded state, to the expansive mind state where we recognize and fully understand the infinite nature of Hashem, but within the creation. That's a prelude to the state as it will be when Mashiach will come, which then it says, Umola ha'aretz de'es Hashem, kamayim le'yom mechasim, that the whole world will be full of the knowledge of Hashem. And then it says, Es ruach hatuma avim min haaretz, Hashem will completely remove the spirit of impurity from the world. What is the practical lesson that we can gain from the story of the Meraglim and from this mystical interpretation? What we need to know is that da ma'alamayla mimach, what's happening happens and starts with us. We need to move from moichin de katnus, from the small-mindedness, to the moichin de gadlus, to the expansive state of mind. Once there was a Jew who asked the Tzemach Tzedek whether he should go to live in Israel. The Tzemach Tzedek saw that certain souls belong in Israel, and his soul actually had a mission in the diaspora. So he said to him, Mach do Eretz Israel. He said, make Israel here. What does that mean? After all, the physical land is over there. What he meant was this state of flowing with milk and honey, bringing down the state of the expansive mind through meditation, through learning chassidus, through contemplation and meditation, hisbonenus. This is what you should do so that even here, within the physical world, you should be able to make a dira lo yisbarach, a dwelling for Hashem, wherever you are. And hence, by doing that, we can live a life of b'chol darachecha dayehu, of knowing Hashem in all our ways. Hashem should help each one of us to fulfill that and ultimately merit the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, when Umala ha'aretz de'as Hashem, the whole world will be full of the knowledge of Hashem, k'mayim le'ol mechasim, as the water covers the sea, and we will merit to see in Eretz Israel, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the resting of the Shekhinah, and the Nigla, the revelation of V'ro Kol Basa Yachtov, that all flesh, all the physicality will see, Ki Pi Hashem Diber, that it is the mouth of Hashem that has spoken.